Hello, all my beautiful people. It's time for another fun episode of If You Give a Dad a Podcast. And I just want to say thank you to everyone listening right now. Whether this is your first time listening or if you've been listening for a long time, I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. So I think I have a really cool episode for you guys. I know that I really enjoyed recording it with my guests that I had this week, and I believe you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. I had with me Jesus Pedroza. Most of you probably know him as the Kartun. He has done all kinds of amazing stuff, and we're going to talk about all the cool things that he does today, whether that be Upper Deck or some of the comics that he does or some of the other things that he's done as well. He's also known as the artist of the pro wrestling stars. So this one's really going to be cool, and I think you guys are going to have a blast hearing what we talk about today. And for those of you who are here just to listen to the episode with Kartun, welcome. I hope you enjoy what you hear, and I hope that you stick around and listen to some of the other episodes I have here as well. So, if you guys are as excited as I am, then let's get this show on the road.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast.
You're bloody welcome!
You know?
Hey, Dad.
If I get my hand stuck in a pickle jar, I'm straight up bull in a china shop, just swinging around.
Started writing songs when I was about 12 or so.
Seriously?
They're retrofitting me now.
And I'm like, yes, finally.
I've also had the opportunity to go train with Hoist Gracie and Dan Severin.
Wow.
I like that. That's different. It stands out.
That day I took my very first bump and it was fun.
There's only one section to go through first.
Yeah.
Toys.
Bro.
I was like, no, man, surely this guy's not worked out that long.
I haven't laughed that hard since I was a little girl.
What?
Man, this guy won't shut up.
And just a reminder before we get started here, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to IYGADAP wherever it is you're listening. Hit that notification bell so you are notified when a new episode drops. Also, make sure that you go out there and rate and review this episode. Tell me what you think of it. And the more people that do that, the more likely I am to be recommended to somebody else. Now, on to the show. All right, everybody. So today's guest is going to be a lot of fun to talk with. I met him at PTXCon back in April, I believe it was. And he is a comic book artist, an editorial cartoonist, and a literary illustrator. He is known to many as the artist of the pro wrestling stars, and I am talking about Jesus Pedroza. He is also known as the Kartun. Did I say that right?
It's El Kartun.
El Kartun. Do you just say El Kartun? Okay.
Yeah.
Man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, weather considered. I'm here in Baja and it's super hot. But aside from that, I'm pretty good. You know, just working, taking a minute off work for this interview.
Okay.
And just living life.
Well, man, I really appreciate you, taking time out of your busy schedule to come on here and talk to me. And, because I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. We set this up, what was it, probably almost 2 months ago?
Yeah. It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to talk about, where we met at and everything a little bit. We both were at PTXCon. You were right across from me, and you got to meet the guys that I was with from Original Geek and all that stuff. What was it like being at that con for you?
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. I really like going to conventions that are out of state and, for me, to another country, because I really embrace cultural differences, right? And I really like how alike fandom is in different places. Right. So, yeah, it was like my second time in Texas, the first time going to a convention in Texas.
Okay.
And it was a blast. I was very excited. I had the guy from Pog was over there, right? And I got to do some Pog illustrations that were featured at that convention. So yeah, it was very nice to not just be, a guest artist, which is an honor unto itself, but to be a featured artist, that's just always fun. And the people from from Texas were really nice. They were very kind in Paris, Texas. So that was very fun.
Right on, right on. Well, yeah, and you did like the poster art even, didn't you? Because you had like Sam Stackhouse like climbing the Eiffel Tower there in Paris, Texas, and everything. I thought that was the illustration that you did there was really cool. I liked that a lot.
No, thank you. It was very fun to draw Sam and to draw Fuego del Sol and all the other talents that were featured in the poster. But I can't take full credit on it because it was made under the direction of Brad Chismo. He suggested what the content would be.
Yeah.
And of course, the colors by Pixel Ronin, which is a Nigerian colorist that we're a 1-2 punch. We've partnered on so many projects together at this point. I mean, him and I have done like official art for featuring Sergeant Slaughter, featuring in Mick Foley, featuring Thunder Rosa, et cetera, so many wrestling talents that it would have been silly of me to not pull him over to this project.
Right. It turned out great. I actually still have my own set. I didn't take them out. You were talking about the Pogs and stuff. I actually still have my own. I have the set, but I didn't punch them out of their little card there yet because I thought that was really cool. So you were talking a minute ago about, I think this was before we started recording. You were talking about working with Shmoko Comics. How did you get started doing that?
Lockdown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, lockdown. During lockdown, well, on my end, I was doing back here in TJ. I was already a published artist, and I had done a lot of like newspaper stuff, but I also had a business where we would draw caricatures in parties.
Okay.
And there's no parties or social events during COVID. So all of a sudden I became available to start accepting all the gig proposals that I would get online and would have to say no.
Yeah.
And one of those was Red Chismo. Back then it was called Chismo Comics. And we started working on project by project basis, and we just got a really good understanding. We started working what is known as the Marvel way, where I don't get a straight up script, but I would get a plot and come up with the art and then give it back to the writer, and they do the rest of the stories, and we clicked, and that became like a continuous thing. Eventually Red Chismo Comics became Shmoko, and we're making history. Just working comic books and doing comic art.
Right. So yeah, I know that I was reading about some of the things that you've done, and one thing that I saw in there was the El Sol newspaper that you worked with. So is this how you started into the like the kind of illustration world, is doing the newspapers and things, and then you just moved on to comics through that?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So I became a dad at a very young age. So that meant that I had to get regular 9-to-5s. Right. And at some point I got multiple jobs. So I first started working as a cartoonist for El Sol, and that was great. But at some point I had to kind of let it go and focus on work. I'm just paying bills, even though I would get handsomely compensated for the work that I did there because I did reach mild success. Yeah. It wasn't enough, just the hustle is real. So then I got back on it. I left it. I got back on it. Then a gentleman, an editor from Adoro Books, met me at an art fair. And he said, "Hey, I want you to illustrate a couple of covers for some of my books," and I did. And then he saw my background in cartooning, and he was doing an anthology on funny medical stories, and he called it My Funny Medical. Published it through Amazon. Got me to do the interior artwork. Okay. And I kind of picked up cartooning and caricature again. Yeah. Now, just for the record, I really like the work that I did for editorial, but I don't like politics. Politics are sad.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and I live in Mexico, so there's an extra level of sadness there in politics.
Yeah.
So it lost its funny for a while. So I couldn't just do that. So, I became an English teacher. Then I became a corporate trainer, but I would always kind of have gigs, professional gigs that would get me back to it, that luckily I wouldn't search. People would, recommend me from word of mouth. And I even got to be on a morning show here in Mexico, where I would draw people in the morning, it's a morning show, you get hosts, they do funny bits and they have special guests, and I would do caricatures of the guests or do a caricature of whatever was being celebrated that day, if it was Teachers Day or Children's Day or whatnot. And I kept doing the whole editorial cartoon there, but not politically.
Right.
But I also did like gallery work. I would do paintings. I was just an artist.
Right.
And doing comic book work always seemed like show business for me. I didn't know that it was an option on the table.
Yeah.
I always drew comic books, and I found a nice niche doing social commentary books, because I figured I was treading that fine line between grown-up, serious, cultural awareness, and then just cartooning. Right. Which kind of fed my inner child. And I was invited to a convention in Baja called ComCom, and people started commissioning me for fan art, drawing Wolverine and Spider-Man and other well-known superheroes. Yeah. And that is how I pivoted into comic books. I was like, wait a minute, I can do this. Nothing is stopping me from doing this.
Right.
And that was at one point. So back to your question, did it start from El Sol? It kind of did, but it didn't. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up one thing there. Politics. It is a very it can be a very depressing thing. So did they give you okay, we want one? Did they write out the joke for you, and then you just wrote the comic, or you drew the comic strip that would go with it, or how does that actually work when it comes to these political comics?
Well, I guess it didn't work as I would have expected it, because when I approached them, which is the one job that I approached, I raised my hand for that, is that I wanted to do a strip. I wanted to do the next Charlie Brown or the next Garfield. Yeah. And the editor, the editorial chief, he was more interested in the things that interested him, which is politics. He wanted to see social commentary in that sense. Right. And I this was my first gig, just so you know. I was an English teacher, and my kid, who was 5 or 6 at the time, I don't know what after school special he saw, but he made a comment. He commented, said something in the likes of, "Dad, is it true that childhood dreams are the best and you should follow them?" And I'm like, yeah. And that got me thinking about my childhood dream, and I wanted to be a cartoonist. Yeah. Right. To be honest, I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I didn't see it as the moment. I didn't see it as a possibility. Right. So when I applied for the job, I asked them, hey, I'm a cartoonist. I'm here looking for a job. I showed him some of my drawing skills, and the editor, he just started asking me about political personas, like who's the American president, who's the Mexican president, who's the governor, right? Okay. He asked me for relevant dates, like Independence Day or Labor Day, if I knew what those were and what their origins were. And even though I didn't prepare for it, I'm a nerd, so I kind of did answer those things, Yeah. And then he asked me if I knew how to draw a caricature of somebody, which I hadn't done ever. Yeah. But I had seen people do it in Vegas, those cartoonists that you see at the circus. So I figured, yeah, I can do that. And he just gave me a pen and some yellow paper, and I drew him, and he was impressed. And I was impressed because I didn't know that I could do it without penciling first. Yeah. So that was scary. I remember when I was halfway done that I did get a likeness. I was like, oh, like I'm doing it. It's happening. and to answer your question, I didn't get to do a strip right away. So what they would do is that back then, they would still have physical media spelling correctors, spell checkers.
Okay.
Right. So every article, every news article that was written, because it was a daily paper, had to be turned in by 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So they would spell check them all, and I would get a huge stack of whatever was spell checked on my little desk by 9 o'clock. And I had from 9 to 10 to read everything and think about what I wanted to illustrate.
Oh, okay.
And just so you know, I would read more than what was going to be published in the newspaper, because not everything makes it to print. You know, some things need better sources, something, you know, kind of hammer against a sponsor and they're going to censor for whatever reason.
Right.
So other times I didn't take my content out of the news, but I would have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was a fun learning curve, because at first I would illustrate what was being read, right? Like if they said the president is visiting Baja, so I would draw Baja kind of sweeping streets and having a nice sign that said "Welcome, President."
Okay.
And the editor pulled me in and said, "You know what, man? You're not giving me any commentary here. What's your opinion about this?" And to make a long story shorter, he said, "You know, as a political cartoonist, you gotta focus on three things. One, make us think, right? We don't have to agree with whatever you're going to make us think about, but make us think, make us reflect on something. Yeah. Because if you're just going to illustrate what we're writing, you're just repeating what the reporter is saying."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that it says you're not illustrating a book. You are a political cartoonist. So we need opinion here. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you have to make it funny. Yeah. Because there has to be a comedic turn to it. It doesn't have to be haha funny, but we have to see a comedic intention behind it. So make us think, make it comedically inclined, mm-hmm. and make it skillful. Like anybody can, we see that now. Anybody can make us think with a meme, but that doesn't mean that they drew it, right? They just took a picture and clipped something from it. Yeah. So we're paying an artist to do art. So you have to show us your skill, make it visually attractive, and try to check those three boxes when you do your work, he said. And that kind of got me on a mindset, and it gave me a specific goal as to what my job was. Right. Yep. And it was hard. It was hard because the more I learned about I say politics, but politics is not just political party. It's about social situations, right? Right. Yeah. And news, and the more I got to know about it, the less funny it got, really. And it started getting depressing. And I remember that I felt that there was the one thing that I really walked away with, if there were just one thing that I walked away with from that gig, which, it lasted quite some time, is that there's so much crap in the world. I don't want to add more to it. And I tried that to have whatever it is that I do to be at least to come from a more joyful place. Right. Even if I'm going to draw a horror comic or anything like that, which I love drawing horror, it comes from a place of, guts, this is fun. Right. Right. Yeah. No, so I hope people get that from my work.
Definitely. Yeah. So would you say that horror is your favorite genre to draw, or what is your favorite genre?
I don't think I have a favorite genre. It's all about storytelling. Mm-hmm. If the story's good, it's going to be good. Right. I mean, we all of us comic book fans, when they ask me, what's your favorite superhero? What's your favorite comic? I'll ask, well, who's making it? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I love Batman Hush. Right. That was Jim Lee and was it Scott Snyder, I think, and but they did so much work beside that. They did Justice League for a while. Before that, Jim, just made history with X-Men.
Yeah.
And so even when I was little, I kind of focused on creator work, and it's more of the story itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I like drawing drama. I like conveying things. I like doing what I haven't done before.
Right.
Because when you work in comics, okay, so you're able to tell the story. Great. You're able to be able to use a visual medium so people understand A leads to B leads to C.
Right.
But if it's a comedy, you got to be a director. Where are you going to place the camera? Right. What's the pacing for it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like De Niro as a comic, but he'll never be, in my opinion, as good as Robin Williams was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that applies to comic book work. Like, you're good at telling the story, but what's the nature of the story? What's the nature of the scene?
Yeah.
And some writers are very specific in their scripts. They'll tell you, I want an American shot, and I want the camera angle, just looking at the guy's eyes. But that's where through time, I've met some really special writers that them and I just click. And I've also worked with writers that we just don't click.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's bound to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we always get the job done
right
at a professional level.
Yeah.
Because you got to do that.
Exactly.
But it's all about the story, man. That's what it's about.
Right. So you actually brought up a word that I had never thought of using for comic books until actually I heard it being talked about today, talking with the guys in Original Geek, and that's camera angles. I never thought of it that way, but they were talking about they were doing something, and they were talking about how they like the camera angles on this one page, and I was like, for a minute, I had to pause for a minute, but I was like, because it's almost like these panels are part of like a show or a movie, and you have to have those angles. But I'd never really thought of it being that way, that you would have to break it down even in your mind as being different angles in the panels.
Right. That is something that I was talking about not long ago with a writer called Ruben Nadra. He's known for writing Archie's greatest comic ever. He kind of came up with the idea of having the Archie characters have superpowers. I didn't get to work on that, but him and I have been working on two projects. One of them is called Caligera, distributed by, I think it's Blood Moon Comics. Okay. And we're also working on a Linkin Park bio comic, a one-shot issue with I think it's, oh gosh, I don't remember the publisher right now. But I had already drawn the whole comic book. Like, I did it. Yeah. But, because there's a deadline. Right. And they said, can you deliver it? And I said, hey man, I would really like to work on this some more, because I don't like the camera angles. I don't think we're making this comic as memorable as it should be, particularly for the IP. I mean, whether you're a big fan or not of the band Linkin Park, we can't deny that for the Linkin Park generation, I mean, they're it for a lot of people. That's what new rock was, if new rock was your scene.
I'm one of those people, by the way. I love Linkin Park.
So and Ruben wrote some very specific camera angles, but I like that in his script he described, make it epic. Yeah. Make it badass. And I figured, you know what, this is good. It conveys a story, but it's a one shot. We're not gonna get a second shot at this. We're not gonna get a volume 2 for me to redraw something. Right. So I'm in the spectrum, and part of that has, I have OCD, and sometimes just really focus on the specifics. Like, well, during this period, this band member didn't have any facial hair, so I got to convey that. Right. Yep. And during that period, this band member had expansions in his ears, but before that, they only had regular piercing.
Yeah.
And so I keep trying to please those that really know, come up with a really good story, and get the best camera angles for the most dramatic thing. And also, I'm very judgmental of my own comic book work. I've noticed that I've fallen into a slump of grid pages.
Yeah.
And no, dude, we grew up in the 90s, and McFarlane and Liefeld gave us this awesome pages where you would have the smoke of a cigarette kind of curl around a page onto the steam of a coffee cup.
Right.
And that was so creative. And I'm like, nah, man, I have to go back. And how do I get those effects merged with good camera angles, merged with good storytelling?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And an art skill. And again, this is kind of me reworking those lessons that I got from working in the newspaper in El Sol, and applying that type of awareness onto my comic book work.
Right. So you mentioned, no, that's totally good. And, I like that because you put a lot of detail into it. And, I like that when I bring, different artists on here to kind of tell me, how their process works and stuff. And I did want to ask you, who would you say are some of your bigger influences when it comes to your style?
Well, my style has changed through time. I think that if I were to define my current style, as far as influences go, I would say very different sources. I would say Francis Manapul.
Okay.
Not so much his wash and watercolors, but just the overall anatomy, I think, and character design he applies. I really like how it's a bit grungy. It's not always super clean and defined. And I find that to make the art itself more organic, and but I really like the facial expressions and camera angles and that you get from Ed McGuinness.
Okay.
Now, particularly, how Ed McGuinness makes characters really muscular, and you get muscles wrapped over muscles.
Right. Yeah.
I really like that for particularly big, strong, muscular people. Like, if probably the way that he draws Superman would be the way that I draw the Hulk.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
But and that was a big influence for when I got to draw Sergeant Slaughter, because Sergeant Slaughter, for me, he's G.I. Joe come to life. Right?
Yeah.
And he was like the drill sergeant, and he's the guy that went against that winged demon-looking guy in the movie. So in my mind, I always thought that Sergeant Slaughter would be as strong as He-Man, even though he's not. I know better now. So when I got to draw him, I went from this angle where you look at him from slightly from under the chin up to make him look more epic.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I flexed his arm. I made his fist at waist length, so I could, show off the bat of bicep and get in that superhero pose with his chest sticking out, right?
Right.
And really take advantage of the comic book style medium.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
So, did you grow up being a wrestling fan?
I'm Mexican. What do you think? We have luchadores.
All right.
Right?
I'll give you that. Okay.
Yeah, it's religion, man. Yes, definitely. We had wrestler movies when I was little, and what I liked about the old Mexican wrestling lore is that they really embraced the characters that they were representing.
Yeah.
Right. So if you got in El Santo movie, he would be like James Bond in a flashy cars with Christmas lights pretending to be on a dashboard as if it were a computer, kind of like the Batman did.
Yeah.
And he fought mummies and he fought zombies. He fought aliens. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, those old El Santo movies weren't about, we gotta get the championship belts. No, man. I mean, Blue Demon or Blue Demon comics
Yeah.
He fought red and blue ninjas in the Himalayas. So, that's just amazing. And that is something that I wish modern day American wrestlers would embrace, because they invest so much of their time and their career into making this greater than life characters.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I could easily see a horror movie featuring The Undertaker.
Oh,
right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Just kind of make wrestling not be like the main goal of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just great. So yeah, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I'm a huge wrestling fan. In Tijuana, we have a wrestling museum, and it's amazing. They have torn masks from legendary wrestlers, and they have seats from the original seats from the Arena Mexico, which is like the main place where you want to have professional Mexican wrestling.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm a huge wrestling fan.
That's cool. I would love to see that museum. The one thing that sticks out to me a lot when it comes to, wrestling in Mexico and stuff is I'm a big Chris Jericho fan. Always have been. And I loved reading his stories about how serious that they take wrestling in Mexico,
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a way of life for them, and you've got wrestlers that have come out, from there, and, Rey Mysterio being one, his, he's so iconic with it. And I mean, there's tons more of them, but I loved hearing the stories about wrestling there, and people, having a knife pulled on him because they believe that it was real. There's a lot of passion in wrestling when it comes to Mexico.
Oh yeah, definitely. In fact, here in Tijuana, I mean, it's not uncommon. It's not super common, but it's not uncommon to see a street performer wrestler.
Really?
Right? You'll drive up to a corner, you get a stoplight, and sometimes you get somebody juggling balls, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll get 2 or 3 masked people. They'll run into the middle of the street. One of them will knock a guy with a chair in the back, and they'll start doing moves over concrete.
Oh wow!
Over concrete. I kid you not. I'm not entirely sure it's you, but it's in our DNA, man. Really, it's. And you know what? It's very common that wrestling will bring out the brass. I mean, people will be the classiest, fanciest people. They're almost required to be as crass as can be when you're in a Mexican wrestling audience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The one thing that I like about American wrestling over Mexican wrestling is theatrics. It's the story.
Okay.
There's so much independent wrestling here that if you have rivals in one show, they'll be tag team partners in the next show in a different promotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't get to establish heroes' journeys.
Yeah.
Right. And that is something that I really like from American wrestling. And that's what attracted me to the original WWF. I was a huge WWF fan, still am.
I mean, I'm still quite a big fan of it myself. I'm really enjoying a lot of the storylines that they have going on right now, especially with the new bloodline. I don't know if have you been keeping up with the new bloodline stuff that's going on SmackDown? Yes,
I kind of have to. It's part of my job.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, something's rad will tell me, hey, we'll be working with this talent that all of a sudden got signed by WWE, and him and I really like people.
Yeah.
Reaching success.
Right.
We enjoy that so much. We enjoy not just because we knew them before, but just in general, like even if it's somebody that we don't know, but we know have been hustling for a while in the wrestling scene, we love that new blood getting their shot.
Yeah. So I actually have a funny story. So when you say Radchismo, it's the guy from PTX correct?
Right. The guy with the mask.
Yes.
The blue mask.
So I have a funny story when it comes to that. That was actually my very first ever con that I was like, I guess you would say, a guest at. And when he reached out to me, he's the one who invited me to come to that con. And I was so new to the whole thing, I had no idea what he was trying to ask me. And he was like, so do you have these dates available? And I was like, for what? I had no idea. But so that it was really cool to be able to do that. And that one will always be very special to me. But yeah, I had no idea what he was asking when he first asked me.
Right. You know what? I'll tell you something fun about Rad Chismo. So
Okay.
Rad Chismo is the guy, right? But it's also a character.
Yeah.
And you can read the Red Chismo comic. You can probably buy it off Amazon, the Red Chismo and the 88 Terrace. And that is the first comic that him and I started working on.
Okay.
And it's such a funny story because I was reached out first to draw 2 pages. 2 pages. This was during lockdown. And I was like, sure. Right. And I drew those 2 pages. And then they said, hey, we got another short story. And what we're doing is a type of collection or an anthology with different artists drawing this. And I was like, oh, okay. So they gave me a 4-pager, but they asked me to draw it somewhat different from what I had done before. So I figured, sure, I'll do that. And then I got reached back again with another story. Said, hey, this other guy didn't deliver the story in time. So, me being kind of versatile, if you've seen my portfolio online, kind of all over the place. I said, hey, if you can draw a different drawing style, we'd love to give you this other page, this other story. And that repeated again, hey, if you can do yet another different style and character designs, we'll give you yet another story. and then they published volume 1. And in this case, it was entirely drawn by me. And I didn't know I had drawn a comic book. I thought I had drawn a couple of shorts along with some other artists. And it is to my understanding that some other artists did deliver their work, but it was a tad too late for publishing.
Okay.
So then I got to flex to people at home, like, hey, I got this comic book published right now. And I'm like the artist, not just an artist in it, as I had understood it at first.
Right.
And that's how that happened. And you can get that story. But also the whole thing about Red Chismo and the 88 Terrace is that Rat is a multi-dimension traveler, and he goes to different quote-unquote terraces. So Rat Chismo is a mask, and you can get another Rat Chismo that looks differently some other time, and it'll be like, hey, well, he just comes from a different dimension. And I'll tell you this, there's a Rat Chismo in Tijuana.
Okay.
Right? A totally different guy, but it's Rat Chismo because the same guy, because he's from another dimension.
Okay.
And that's always a fun thing.
That's cool. So,
and yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, we just gonna make the note that it's kind of like old Mexican wrestling, where you would see wrestlers in the ring, but then you would see them in the movie.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily played by the same guy in a movie, and that's Red Chismo taking a page from Mexican wrestling and applying it to his own persona.
Wow, that's really cool. So there's something that you brought up a few different things over the last few minutes and everything that I kind of wanted to bring together to ask about. So you brought up how Undertaker being in a horror movie. They kind of did that with Kane for one thing, but there's a movie that I wanted to ask you about, and it's a guy that you've actually done some artwork with, and that's Rey Mysterio Sr. There was a horror movie that he was a part of called WrestleManiac. Did you ever watch that movie?
I have not, but him and I have talked a lot about it.
Have you? Okay. What is his thoughts on that movie?
Well, thoughts on the movie itself, I think he liked it. He remembers it fondly. He remembers, just being young and being able to do that, because nowadays, if you see him at a convention, and I get to see him fairly often. Okay. By fairly often, I mean like 3 times a year. Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll be on a wheelchair, or once he sits down, he won't stand up until it's time to leave. Right. Yeah. Wrestling has taken its toll. Yeah. In his life, but he remembers it very fondly, man. And
It was a very unique movie.
A lot of like behind the scenes stuff, like how pre-production was and production was, and where they went to film certain scenes.
Yeah. I remember watching that for the first time, and I was like, I had no idea what I was jumping into when I watched it, but it was fun it was a fun movie to watch. It had a very unique storyline about it. And no, I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on that movie, but it was probably one of the first horror wrestling movies, I guess you could say, that I watched.
Well, just so you know, and there's nothing scary about this, but if you really go to the golden age of wrestling, you have El Santo versus the Vampiras, which is the she vampires.
Yeah.
And El Santo versus the mummies, right? And you have Santo and Blue Demon versus the monsters, and it's basically like a Mexican take on the Universal monsters. And it's fun because they'll always give you almost like a Toxic Avenger type of origin for these monsters.
Yeah. So it's funny you bring up the Toxic Avenger. I actually bought, you know how Walmart has that like collectible section now?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have a whole collectible section, and they had these little dolls, and I have the Toxic Avenger doll that I bought there for like $15. I love those movies. The Trauma films, I wish they had more of those.
There's a charm to them.
There is. Yeah. I was probably, I want to say I was in my early 20s whenever somebody showed me my first Trauma film, and they were a lot of fun. I really enjoy that kind of it's its own thing, you know, and but I enjoy that type of film.
You know, I think, and a friend of mine told me about this. I myself haven't seen it yet, but they're making a comic book universe of that era of cartoons, because, you know, they were Toxic Avenger cartoons, right?
Yeah.
And they're kind of bringing the biker, what was it, the biker mouses from Mars?
Yeah, the biker mice from Mars. Yeah, and stuff like that. They're making it their own little comic book universe. That's something that you can Google and check up on. I think you'd be very interested in that. Okay, yeah. I actually, my wife makes all of my merch and everything for me, and every once in a while I'll have her make just a nerdy T-shirt for me. And one of the prints I have over here for her to make a shirt for me is Biker Mice from Mars, because I had all the toys as a kid. I watched the cartoons. It was so cool.
Right. Now, I myself, I did like the Biker Mice, but I was more of a Battletoads and Samurai Pizza Cats fan.
All right, yeah. I remember both of those.
Yeah. So anime is particularly big in Mexico because, I mean, I lived here in Baja, and we got American television. It would just kind of leak into our airwaves. But if you lived further south, you would get just Televisa, and Televisa cartoons were either Looney Tunes or a bunch of anime. It was just anime.
Really?
Yeah. So when I was little, my cousins from further down south, they were already very familiar with Sailor Moon and Ranma and a Half, which is about a boy that whenever he gets hot water poured on him, he turns to a girl, and then cold water turns him back into a boy.
Okay.
It was back in the 80s, so progressive.
Yeah.
And obviously Dragon Ball. I mean, Dragon Ball is just outright a religion here. One could argue that if anything took the place of wrestling in Mexican culture, pop culture, it's probably Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
It's crazy here.
Yeah.
And I guess, and obviously Samurai Pizza Cats was part of that equation back in the 90s.
Well, I'm a big anime fan too. In fact, I've had multiple voice actors from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z on the podcast here.
That's fun.
Yeah, and so I've always loved that. So you might have heard this, but I've heard that, you know, in Mexican culture and stuff, that anime is a big deal. And there was a meme that came out right around the time Toriyama passed away, and it said that like they had already like set a day aside as soon as that happened in Mexico in remembrance of him, because
True.
it was such a big part of their culture there.
It's true.
Yeah.
It is. It is. It definitely is. I mean, even amongst the wrestlers that I get to work with on this side of the border,
Yeah.
we often refer to Dragon Ball, and particularly Dragon Ball and Saint Seiya, right? Like the very first, I think, professional wrestler outfit I got to design was for a guy that goes by Pegasus. And obviously he wanted his mask to kind of echo or resemble somehow the Pegasus armor from Saint Seiya.
Okay.
Right? So yes, definitely. Fun fact, and you bet you probably don't know this, but the Mexican voice actor that voices Goku, Mario Castañeda, he's also like the default Latin American voice actor for Mark Ruffalo.
Really?
And he has a fun story where all of his voice actor friends were gonna voice the Avengers, and he was not in that conversation. He was not in that cast because Edward Norton was a Hulk.
Oh,
you know, right? And when they did the very last minute announcement at San Diego Comic-Con that it was Mark Ruffalo, he was like, he was so happy because like he made it to the Avengers. Like, yes.
Right.
Wow. That's just a fun story I remember from him.
Yeah. That is really cool. So, and you were talking about how wrestlers and everything over there, are such big anime fans. It's really funny because, I've worked with local wrestling companies here in Northwest Arkansas where I'm at, and they are some of the biggest anime fans. I think that's just a universal language when it comes to wrestlers nowadays, is that they're all anime fans. I mean, it's funny. I would be talking to them backstage and be like, hey, I'm having this dude on my show. And, they're just geeking out hardcore because they're such a big fan of anime too.
Yeah, they totally are. Yeah, man. Most wrestlers have a big side of their personality just devoted to geekdom. You see that with Thunder Rosa. Like she has outfits that kind of echo Wolverine and echo other characters like that. She's got that nerd fandom in her as well. Right. Also, like the first like license start I did for a wrestler was who back then was Rey Mysterio Jr. Now, I'm going to watch my pronunciation here because if you come to Baja, there's a difference between Rey Mysterio and Rey Mysterio.
Okay.
Rey Mysterio spelled with a Y because it's in English and you see him in WWE, right?
Yep.
Rey Mysterio spelled with an I. That's like the OG, which is his real life uncle, as far as I understand the lineage there, right? And Rey Mysterio has, I don't know if this is very common over there, but here, most successful wrestlers are legacy titles, kind of like how The Flash is a legacy superhero. Okay. Right? So you get Rey Mysterio, you get Rey Mysterio Jr., you get son of Rey Mysterio, then you get Rey Mysterio 2, right? And you get this legacy cast of characters. So the very first official license start I did for a superhero was was known as son of Rey Mysterio. Okay. Right? Which he now goes by Rey Horus, Houres. And he's been in China, Japan. He's so successful. I mean, you should Google him because he's one of the most aerial wrestlers. His style is he just flies all over and he has that physique that kind of looks like Captain America. Yeah. Because we know that some of our wrestlers are well known for having, some love in their gut. And because he has that physique, he just flies over the ring and he has a goatee. And he's a huge, like, vintage gamer. He really likes old school Mario and Punch-Out. Oh, cool. He's a cool cat. And yeah, that was one of the first gigs that I got for wrestlers. And it's because his sister worked with me. I used to work at a call center. And I was doing art as a side gig And she's like, "Oh, well, my brother's Rey Mysterio, and he would love to do a comic book style rendering of his mask and things." And I did it, and he loved it, and that was like the main thing for a while for him.
Wow. So I kind of want to switch gears here a minute and talk about something that I know that you do, and that is you work with Upper Deck, don't you?
Well, I get to work with Upper Deck.
Right.
So, but it's mainly sketch card stuff. I get to do sketch cards
Okay.
for Upper Deck, and that's so much fun because I get to work with characters that are bucket list characters. I get to draw fun stuff.
So can you kind of explain what that is for my listeners and everything, what it is exactly that you're doing with them?
Okay, yeah, I'll explain the way that I explained it to my brothers.
Okay.
Because they're not nerds. They're like regular folk. And, well, you know how back in the 90s, we used to collect X-Men Fleer cards or Marvel Masterpieces cards?
Yep.
And every couple of packs, I mean, you get your base set. Let's call it arbitrarily. It's a 150 card base set.
Right.
And then you would get this little side set of Prism cards, right? Like 5 Prism cards that would be special cards. You'll get one of them every like 5 packs. If you're lucky enough, you get a Prism card.
Yep.
And if you didn't collect the Prism cards, that's fine because you still have your base set, but you could add on top of your set by having the Prism cards.
Right.
Well, nowadays, also, what you can get is a sketch card, which Upper Deck will commission an artist such as myself to draw physically in a card, right? And it'll be a one-of-a-kind card. And when you're buying your collection cards, let's say you're buying your latest Upper Deck Marvel Metal Rogues Gallery collection cards, every couple of packs, you can get a sketch card drawn by me or by one of the other artists that Upper Deck has officially licensed to draw specifically licensed characters. And these cards are one of a kind. Like if you get a sketch card, it'll add to your collection. But once you get that, there's not another one like it. It's because it doesn't go to massive reproduction or distribution.
Right.
So, like, for instance, the last gig I got from Upper Deck, I got to draw some Marvel Rogues Gallery villains. I got to draw 30 of them.
Yeah.
Well, I would say 33 because I drew 30 that I shipped back to Upper Deck, and if they're approved, they'll put them in a pack. So it's not enough for me to draw them.
Right.
They'll give me a list of like they'll give me a sandbox. I can play within that sandbox, but I can't do anything outside of it.
Right. Right.
And I'll ship those back. Like I'll scan them and send those back in scans, and they'll give me some feedback. Like, hey, maybe if you change this, you might want to add more cleavage to this character. And Upper Deck and the client, which would be Marvel, they choose what's approved and goes into the packs. And then I ship those back. But I also get to keep 3 artist proofs. And these are 3 cards that will have an AP symbol in a corner. And I get to keep those for myself. They have to be approved by Upper Deck and Marvel as well.
Okay.
But I get to keep those because a lot of people will often ask me, "Oh, you're drawing that. I would love to have one of your cards." And so, well, good luck. You know, you're going to have to buy some packs and hopefully you'll get one.
Right.
But I get 3 artist proofs that you just get directly to me.
Yeah.
But those are really special for me to have because guess what? If I get rid of one, whether I sell it or give it to my brother or whatnot, I'll have 2.
Yep.
And once I have 2, and if one gets bought, I'll have 1.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
And I can't ask for more.
Right.
Those 3 are the only ones. And it's a fun thing because I also got to draw some Scooby-Doo cards from the Scary Cards Scooby-Doo line from Upper Deck.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan, particularly old Scooby-Doo. So
Yeah.
they told me part of that instruction was, hey, you can't do anything that's new Scooby. It has to be limited to the original
Okay.
Scooby-Doo show and the Scooby-Doo Where Are You series.
Okay. All right.
And that was a particularly challenging job because I don't want to just copy what was done before. I don't want to just draw it as it is. I kind of have to put my own spin on it.
Right.
So, it's me, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also, some of those characters have been featured in newer media, like in the movies.
Yeah.
So how do I tiptoe that line where I'm drawing something kind of original that sticks true to the original two Scooby-Doo series and can no way in any form or fashion be confused to the newer media? So what I did is that I got to watch religiously those shows, and I picked specific scenes from those episodes and I recreated them in my own style.
Wow.
And that's
really
such a fun project to do.
Oh, heck yeah. I bet you were having a blast doing that. It's really funny because my last episode that I recorded, which will come out next Monday, we talked about Scooby-Doo on there as well. And I actually just started watching Scooby-Doo Where Are You with my kids because I found that it's on Max right now. So
Right.
yeah, I grew up watching Scooby-Doo Where Are You, and man, you can't get much better than those cartoons.
Okay, here's a question. What was there a Scooby-Doo monster that scared you that you thought was particularly creepy?
Yes, I thought that there's a couple of them actually. The thing that scared me the most, that kind of creeped me out the most, is whenever they did this a lot in that series, was where the painting and the person would be looking through, like with their own eyes through the painting. That always creeped me out.
Yes. Yeah. I can see that. It kind of put into our little children minds that somebody could be watching us from a painting.
Right. Yeah. It always creeped me out when I'd see a big, painting of somebody after that. I was like, I'd be watching the eyes.
I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it was the Cookie Spooky Space Cook episode.
Okay.
Because of the laugh. They gave that I don't know if you remember the Space Cook, but it was like a skull inside a spacesuit.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever he walked by, he had this laugh, right?
Yeah.
That was just eerie. And I would dream about it. It scared the hell out of me. The episode itself wasn't that scary.
Yeah.
But that laugh that they gave that one character, it messed me up for a while. Little kid, me couldn't sleep with the lights off for a while after that.
I remember some of those shows just seemed a lot more creepy back then. And now I'm just like, man, these are awesome. And I don't know, maybe that's where my love for maybe horror started, was watching Scooby-Doo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I will definitely say that Scooby-Doo did really give birth to my love because I do like horror. I like scary movies. I like scary books. I like scary comic books. I like scary videos. I mean, when every now and then I will play a YouTube playlist of real ghosts caught on camera and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Yeah. I think that's, for me, I think that's also a reason why Supernatural is probably one of my favorite TV shows too.
It is.
Yeah.
God, you just reminded me of a commission I got to do featuring the Winchester brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have that one on my queue. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, that would be so cool. Yeah. Okay. I'm a huge fan of that show. Maybe they went too long. It was 15 seasons? But man, I watched every episode more than once.
You know what? Even those lower seasons have a charm to them when you look back on them. It's almost like The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I fell off The Walking Dead wagon when it became more of The Talking Dead than The Walking Dead.
Right. Yeah.
Right after the governor story ended. But, me being the completionist that I am, again, OCD, is that I started watching it from episode 1, like 2 years back.
Yeah.
I finished it to the end, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I remembered it. At not one point did I say, wow, it really got boring right now.
Yeah.
There's something different from just being able to stream them one after another than having to wait for them week by week, and then just being slightly disappointed from that 1 hour where maybe you weren't feeling it, and then just having that control with streaming.
Right. And so I actually did a rewatch of that towards the beginning of the year, because I had Jason Douglas on here, and he was on like 35 episodes of The Walking Dead. He also plays the voice of Beerus in Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super. And so I rewatched it then, and I got to say, I agree with you. I enjoyed watching that more that time than I did whenever I was watching it week to week on TV.
That's so cool. Yeah. You know, Jason Douglas, I saw this one movie with him that almost nobody has ever heard of, and I really like it. It's called Whitetail. Ever heard of it?
What's it called?
Whitetail.
Whitetail.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay, so it's
a Western.
Right? It's a Western. Right. It's a Western. It's about a dad, you know, and an uncle and a son, and it's actually with Texas, and you know, ever since I went over there to Paris, I got into some heart talks with Creek, you know, the actor.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the Southern accent, and he really recommended that I watch Yellowstone. And I did.
Yeah.
I binged it, and I'm all caught up, and it led me to go into a whole cowboy genre and cowboys as a genre. And I've been really getting into it. In fact, I just saw a movie the other day. I've been getting back into this. I mean, talking to him led to me to watching Whitetail, led to me to watching Yellowstone, led to me to getting back into old spaghetti westerns, those Sergio Leone movies.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's been a journey. Like, just so you know, it seems that I don't work because I watch a lot of TV. I watch TV as I work.
Yeah.
Right? I don't watch TV when I'm breaking down a script into layouts.
Right.
But once I have my layouts and all my references, right before I get into rendering drawings, right? Anything before that, I don't watch TV. I just listen to music. But once I know exactly what I have to do and I just have to perform it in a way, that's when I, you know, just drawing goes into a flow. Right. I don't think about it that much, and I can watch a movie and draw at the same time.
Yeah. There's some people can't do that. I mean, I've always heard, you know, there's people who can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, I've never heard of that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I guess some people can't do it at the same time. Never occurred to me. It's just, I was that little kid that would do my homework with the TV on.
Right.
So I kind of need that side distraction.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will over focus on something. And when I, you know, just going into the topic of mental health, and I mentioned that I'm in the spectrum, and sorry if I know that I tend to hyper focus on one thing and sidetrack, but
that's fine.
Part of me being the spectrum means that I have OCD, and people expect me to act OCD all the time, but they forget that I am in my 40s and I have had therapy, and the product of that is being able to kind of function more, I guess normally would be the word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But if I super focus on something, I will go into the details of it.
Gotcha.
Right. And it has cost me a few trouble. I mean, there was this one time not long ago where Rat was like, why do you spend so much time in this one illustration? And I said, because I focused on the details. I needed it to not be I was doing a character design and I needed it to not be like anything that I was doing. I needed the shape to be itself, but I'm also thinking about the possibilities of, well, how old this character is supposed to be, what kind of materials are the clothes supposed to be, what kind of colors are they gonna be defined as a character, right? And what will be their body language? Therefore, their gesture drawing is key. And I really lasered onto those things, and I figured, hey man, we just want a general design. We can focus on that later. And that's an example of whenever I super focus on the details.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So the way that happens when I'm drawing a comic book is if I have an interior, let's say a living room, and I already planned on where the couches and the windows are going to be, and the camera moves from one character to another as they are walking that space.
Yeah.
I kind of go like, hey man, I really need that background to be accurate to what the environment's design was. And it's like, no, you don't have to do that. Just suggest that we have a little window in the back end. And I know that I can do that. I know that it's fine. In fact, I know that it's okay if I just don't do a background and kind of just add some texture to it for dramatic purposes.
Yeah.
But whenever I fall into that, that's when I kind of drop the project for a day, maybe.
Yeah.
And focus on something else.
Yeah.
Get back on my groove and then revisit it again. Go like, oh, okay, now we can do this. Now we can move forward.
Right.
And so that's why also it helps me a lot to have a bit of a distractor, like a movie playing while I'm working.
Yeah. I totally get that. A lot of times, depending on what I'm doing, I will usually have some kind of background noise going on. If it's not music, then it's a show, so I get it. Sometimes you need that extra distraction. I also know that I've been one of those people where I've hyper focused on something to the point to where by the time I stop, I feel like I've almost ruined it because I focused on it too much.
That is a thing.
It is?
It is.
Okay.
That's why, the way that I work a script and that helps me prevent that is exact. So I get my layouts done.
Okay.
Sometimes, depending on the amount of work, I'll do my own layouts or I'll pay another artist to help me out with layouts. Just let me break down the puzzle of what this narrative will be.
Yeah.
Right. And I haven't really started drawing, but just broke down the script into as many pages as it's going to be. Like this script could go for 22 pages, but it's an 18-page comic, or this script could go for 40 pages, but it's a 22-page comic.
Yeah.
And once I do that, I kind of start tweaking like what's going to be, what are going to be the money shots, what's going to be those really cool panels that are going to make it pop, and which ones are just going to be fillers that take us from point A to point B, right, in a more or less understanding way.
Yeah.
And that don't contradict the script. And then I look for my references. I know I'm going to need a reference of a specific style of architecture for this building. I'm going to need a reference for this type of sky because it's set, let's say, in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has their skies be a certain way. So you kind of really want to honor that. And once I get all my references, I have my little drawing model figurines here, and I'll take pictures for angles that'll help me break down the anatomy the best way and the perspective the best way.
Okay.
And all of that I would still call pre-production. Once I have all of that set, I go into production, and it's just the rendered work. And that's when I tell you, can almost, not always, but sometimes I'll just zoom out. And before I know it, I'm 5 pages in and then 20 pages in. Because I'm not going to hyper focus on that. My mind can wander because there's a plan for it.
Right.
It's whenever the plan is changed that, I'll get a script revision like, this doesn't work. You got to change that. Like, oh man, you're getting me off my groove here, man. So, but that's how my process goes to avoid that hyper focus thing.
Right.
I can actually kind of ruin something from over focusing on it.
Yeah. I've caught myself trying to do that even with editing this show. Sometimes, like I'll hear this one little sound in there, and I don't like it, and I will focus on it, and then when I back out, It's like, well, now this sounds weird completely, and so I'll have to just go back and do it over again. So yeah, no, I've got to figure out a way to maybe try to find a way to back out before I get to that point.
So let me ask you a question then. Does it grind you the wrong way whenever you see like a very successful YouTube podcast that just kind of winged it with a camera phone and visited it directly with next to no editing?
No, not really. I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to what I'm doing. I'm a very big perfectionist at what I've got going on. You know, I'm happy for people who have been able to do stuff like that. If they can, it's awesome. When it comes to me though, I am going to hyperfixate on everything that I've done wrong for it. And that's just how I am with this. I'm very particular. That's the reason why I do all my own editing. This is a one-man show. Nobody helps me with any of it. I do my own editing. I do my own advertisement, all of it.
You know what? I get it.
Yeah.
Get it. I used to be very meticulous with my artwork.
Yeah.
I still am in some things, but not anymore. In fact, my drawing style, I kind of call it intentional grunge.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Corners don't always match. Lines, you can see that they don't always overlap in the most clean way. But I like the energy that I get from those. I would call them intentional imperfections, right? Mm-hmm. Because I used to really focus on it and make really clean work. But then I would see art like that of Francis Manapul or even John Buscema, where they use those really thick brush strokes, and it just seemed more natural, more organic, and I was kind of need those imperfections. I kind of learned to appreciate them.
Yeah.
Right. There's a Latino artist called Rafael Navarro. He's the author of Sonambulo, a comic book about, imagine if Indiana Jones and a luchador mixed, and that's his comic book. And it's with a bit of a noir twist. It's a great comic, Sonambulo. It's been going on for over 25 years.
Huh.
He's a California resident. And it's a wonderful person, by the way. Wonderful person. I just love his energy.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And in his comics, you can see those really cool imperfections, but really cool control of light and dark, almost Mike Mignola-esque, but without being that angular as Mike Mignola style. And I saw his work and I was like, man, there's something really beautiful of just letting the human emotion get through the art in that way, you know?
Right.
And I kind of try to do that with my work. And that's why I think I really do a really good pair up with Dean. That's the real name, Dean of Pixel Ronin, the colorist that I work with, because his coloring is the opposite of my work. It's super clean.
Yeah.
It's super clean, right?
Yeah.
And it's that contrast of his really clean colors and my grungy line work that I feel gives that feel to my work that has really given me some amount of success in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Where to the point where I got to be over in Texas where you are, and you know that leads to what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I got so many conventions around the corner for some up and coming works that I'm doing. There's also, and I'm gonna do a shameless plug here.
Right.
If anybody gets to see Legacy of the View anywhere where you're at, it is written by Specs Thompson. It is a comic book about a teenager who got experimented on and got superpowers, and you can see how it's very reflective to his community. Specs is it's a Black musician, but also a comic book writer.
Yeah,
and he's really conveying what he likes and what he's into and his surroundings into the artwork. And he'll tell me, hey, you got to draw an airport, but try to make it as close as you can to the Atlanta airport. I'm like, got it. Let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying drawing that comic book a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the best comic books that I'm working on right now, and I don't know if I'm totally allowed to say this, I get to work with Chicken Waffle. I don't know if you've ever heard of Chicken Waffle.
Only in what I've read from whenever I was looking up your stuff. I've never heard of it before that.
Okay, so they are a VR game developer.
Okay.
Right, and they're starting to go into the comic book side of things, and I get to adapt some of the video games that they have going on into comic book format. A couple of times I've gotten to do some concept artwork and some promo artwork for them, right? But one of the comic books one of the games they have is called Shadow of Valhalla, and it's Viking afterlife, right?
Okay.
Game about Vikings versus zombies and monsters and gods and stuff like that. And it's a very gory comic book that I'm working. I'm loving working on that one.
So we are actually coming up close to a close. I did have a few more things I wanted to talk to you about.
Go for it.
So it's just a couple quick questions, everything. I wanted to know how you got the name El Cartoon.
That's a twofold. Okay, so when I was working for El Sol de Tijuana, that's where it started. I was signing my name as it was, right? But me going into Mexican politics with an opinion, some people weren't entirely happy about it. So the newspaper's editor suggested that I write a pseudonym.
Okay.
Right? Now, most Mexican political cartoonists do have like another name, right? So I figured, yeah, I can do that. And I was going with my childhood nickname, which is FIFO. But I also, see, when I started working as an artist, my dad always told me that nobody's gonna ask for your work if they don't know who you are, and nobody's gonna hire you if they don't know who you are, if they don't see an added value, because you're not the only one who can do whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
My dad was a doctor, but that's something that he said to me once.
Okay.
So I figured that my 1-2 punch to making an income and living off art when I first started, and I'm talking about over 10 years ago, was that I needed to do something that gave me a name, and I should approach with that name another thing that would give me a steady income. So I approached a coffee shop at the beach that I knew was a bit of a cultural hub, and there were tourists there. But the place wasn't a quote-unquote tourist attraction. There were people who would come to Baja for medical treatment or for business.
Gotcha.
And so I approached the place and I told them, hey, I'm a published cartoonist. I'm published daily, and I would like to be a cartoonist in this place.
Okay.
And at first they said, well, yeah, you can just sit on the table and start drawing people. And I told them, no, you don't understand, sir. I want to have an agreement with you where this would be a place of business for me. You know, give me a fixed spot. I will give you a percentage of my sales, and let's do this formally.
Yeah.
And he went, well, you're a cartoonist. And I didn't know this, but the man was a very intelligent man. Unfortunately, he passed away during the COVID thing because of COVID.
Yeah.
But he said, oh, so you do political satire? And we got to talking about political cartoonists, international political cartoonists.
Yeah.
And he got to respect my craft. And he said, sure, if you want to do cartoons here. And I'll be like, yeah, I'll be a cartoon artist here. And that way you can brag that you have a published artist here. So I'm not just a cartoonist, I'm a published cartoonist.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was the plan, to have that happen, and it worked. And I have my sign that said caricaturas in Spanish, and Americans would approach and say caricature. So it's like, okay, that's not working. So I changed it to English. I put cartoon with a double O and a C. But then those who were non-English speakers would read it in Spanish like cartón, and I was like, no, that's not working either. So I decided to just
not focus so much on the word, but focus on the branding. So I turned the scene to a K because Ks are funner. They're just funner for me to draw, really.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
It does.
And I changed the double O to a U, and I first added those two little dots that you put on a U.
Yeah.
Like
the
Russians
long
do.
U. Yeah.
Yeah. And I realized, and I learned that both Spanish and English kind of recognize that sound as an U, so they were like, "Oh, cartoon." But then I took away the two little dots, and well, I still have them when I sign it.
Okay.
But there's a really famous cartoonist called Sergio Aragones, who was the creator of Gru the Wanderer.
Okay.
And he saw the way that I signed it, and he said, "Oh, it looks like a happy face. It looks, those two dots in the U are kind of like eyes and a nose, and K. If you make it longer under the U, it's gonna be like a smiley face. It's gonna be a happy face." I'm like, "Oh, that's a great idea." So he came up with just me sticking to that, and I went back to the newspaper and I said, "Hey, I think I have a pseudonym for this, and let's just be I would just call it Kartun."
Yeah.
Right. But also, the editorial cartoon was my department.
Yeah.
So whenever we were in a meeting, the chief would say, photography and special events and political and police, and then he would say cartoon, and people would just start calling me Cartoon.
Okay.
Because it was my department. So I figured, this is just the stars aligning for me to just go for it. And I started going with El Cartoon because it was a sign that I had this a coffee shop by the beach where I was a cartoonist. And it was also my pseudonym for the newspaper that they had asked me to do. And that's also the name of the department where I was. And I was writing it in a way that it made sense in a bicultural state, which is Baja. I mean, people here speak fluent Spanglish.
Yeah.
And it kind of went on, and then when I tipped into comic books, I was already known locally as El Cartoon. I mean, if you saw how they had my bio for PTX Con, I had already done a lot on this side of the border under that pseudonym. So I just trademarked it and didn't change it.
Right.
And it's kind of weird. I don't really see me going the long way as a cartoon artist. As a comic book artist, if I really make it big into comic books, which kind of starting to dabble into those bucket list name brands. I mean, I got to draw Magneto. I've got to draw, Carnage and Venom and all those fun characters.
Right.
I don't know. There's another artist that goes by a name as silly as Cartoon. But then again, I thought, well, there's John Romita Jr. and John Romita Jr. is not his name. John Romita was his dad's name.
Yeah.
And it was the bullpen that started calling him John Romita Jr. because he was an artist and the son of John Romita.
Yeah.
And I figured, well, maybe if he can go with a pseudonym like that, maybe so can I. Just going with the punches.
Right on. Yeah. Well, that's a cool story on how you got that and everything, and it is very unique to you, and it's awesome that you're able to take that to all these different places, and El Cartoon, that works.
Yeah. Funny thing, I have had people think that my first name is El.
Really?
Yeah, they're going, "Hey, yo, what's up, El? How you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's weird, but yeah, hi." I'm not correcting you. I do go by Cartoon. Everybody calls. In fact, the few people that end up calling me Jesus, I always feel like I didn't give you permission to call me that, right?
Yeah, that's not the name. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a little invasive, to be honest. It's weird. I know it's not supposed to be, and they don't feel bad. I mean, there's no bad intent for people calling me what my given name is.
Right.
Right. I should probably expect to be called what my given name is.
Yeah.
But it's just I've gone by Cartoon for so long. Even my wife, like, she doesn't call me Cartoon, but she calls me many endearing names. Honey, Hun, right?
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
whenever she calls my name, like Jesus, for some reason, I go like, "Are you angry at me? Why are you calling me by my name?" It's just not natural for me to hear it.
I'm the same way. If my wife says my actual name, I'm like, what did I do?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, am I in trouble?
Yeah, exactly.
But that applies for something else. And it's weird because sometimes when I do like a government thing that I have to pay tax and they go like, "Oh, is your name Jesus Pedroza?" I'm like, "Yeah, yes. You can call me sir." I have to say my name. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Only my mom called me by my name, and I accepted it just fine.
Yeah, yeah. So
even when I was a teacher, people call me teacher.
Oh, you didn't? Well, I mean, most of the time they call their teacher by their last name, though, don't they?
Yeah, but you know what? I was a teacher of English as a second language.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Right. So, I taught adults and teens, and they used to call me Teacher Jesus. Even when I worked in a call center, I used to do customer service in another lifetime for a phone company, and because my ID had my first two initials, JP. Everybody in that company, to this day, whenever I run to a former coworker, they call me J. They call me my initial. They don't say Jesus, right? So it's weird. It's just weird for me to hear my own name being referred to me as that. When I hear Jesus, I think of Christian, Catholic, Jesus.
Yeah,
it's weird.
So, do you have anything coming up that maybe you want to talk about before I get you off of here?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I just used my own name. Yes, I have so much coming up. Well, first of all, I would implore people to stick to the social medias for Chicken Waffle. We're talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's stuff coming there. Pretty soon they'll start showing work in progress for Shadow of Valhalla, that Viking project that I'm working on. They're going to be showing work in progress sheets where we'll be able to see the sketches, then the rendering work, and then the color work. Just giving you some sneak peeks to what's coming there.
All right.
People should check out Specs Thompson, SPECKS Thompson. That is a writer and the author of Legacy of the View. I worked on issue 4. I'm currently almost finished with issue 5. Everybody will follow Blood Moon Studios. That's the ones that recently published Caligera Volume 1, Volume 2 about to drop pretty soon. And it's a 3-part story. It's about a Mexican trio of superheroes, of which one of them got superpowers by being left for dead in the Mexicali Palexico River, which is the most polluted river on this side of the continent, not just the country.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And it's written by Ruben Nadra. There's some migration drama going on there. There's cartel drama going on there. There's superhero shenanigans there. Yeah. And it's a very good story. Volume 1 just dropped this month, and next month Volume 2 is about to drop, and the month after Volume 3. That was already drawn some time back, but they're dropping now, and that's a good one. I'll be visiting the San Diego Comic Fest. I'll be missing San Diego Comic Con this weekend, unfortunately, but not unfortunately because I'm going to a wedding. But I'm already confirmed for San Diego Comic Fest. I'm already confirmed, I think, for the Latino Comics Expo, which that one takes place in where is it? It's further north. I think it's near LA. I forgot the venue right now. Oh, I'm already confirmed for San Diego WhoCon. That is the San Diego Doctor Who convention. And I am the featured artist. I did the official art for the convention this year as well as last year. Awesome. I'm a big Whovian. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. So if you're in this part of the world, check it out. If not, just follow them online. Maybe you can get a print of the work that I did for them.
Okay.
I'll be giving a conference there. What else? Well, obviously, 10 Ton Press will drop the Linkin Park bio comic single issue pretty soon. So people keep. I mean, I don't know exactly when that's coming out, but it's coming before the year's end.
Okay. All right.
So that's pretty cool. people keep checking out Upper Deck Rogues Gallery, dropping some of my sketch cards on there. Right. That's always fun. I mean, I can keep going, to be honest, but I think I'm gonna overwhelm people.
Well, man, you have a lot going on. You're a very busy man.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And of course, people, please follow Mission Pro Wrestling. I do a lot of work with Mission Pro Wrestling, right? That's Thunder Rosa's thing. And you get awesome talents like Genocide and Maddie Rankowski, who's now a WWE talent, right? You have Fuego del Sol there. Some Stackhouse is also, they do things with RWE Wrestling. And oh my goodness, there's so much more. Just follow my social medias and El Cartoon on Instagram and Facebook.
Well, that was my next question: is where can people follow you at?
Yeah. Just go to El Cartoon, misspelled as I misspelled it with a K and a U. On Instagram is my social media of preference. Second is Facebook.
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel, but I really don't upkeep it. I really don't have time for that right now. This has been a season of growth, to be honest.
Yeah.
I hope that it doesn't stop anytime soon. It's fun to be able to see my name and my work related to the things that I have admired since I was a child.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten to do a Star Wars cover. I got to do some work once with Ron Bumblefoot Thal, who's a really badass guitar player who stood in for. He was a guitarist for Guns N' Roses for a pretty long minute there.
Okay.
And if you're a rock fan, if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a sci-fi fan, I'm doing the Doctor Who stuff right now.
Yeah.
And the smaller IPs as well are not to be neglected, because that's where artists' voice really resonate.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff going on. I mean, I post about it in my social media.
Yeah.
All the time.
Awesome. Well, man, it has been amazing talking to you tonight. I'm definitely going to have you back on here. We'll probably talk Doctor Who. In fact, I didn't know that you were a Whovian, so we will definitely have to bring that up.
Doctor Who fan club in Mexico.
Really? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So next time you come on, we'll definitely have to talk about that. And there's a bunch more that we didn't get to cover this time, but we will next time. And man, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. Again, shameless plug. Shout out to Rad Chismo and to Chicken Waffle, who have really been supporting my work.
Yes, sir. All right. I will talk to you a few minutes after we end this recording, but we're going to say bye here for now.
Bye, everybody.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
How about now?
I'm hearing you.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Jesus Christ!
Get off the damn phone!
Are you looking for reliable cell service for your morpher? Check out Cranston Wireless.
Cranston Wireless helped me in a bind. Morphing and dropping baddies.
I was once on the moon and got cell service from Cranston Wireless. It was amazing. I could morph on the moon.
I can send text to my sister in KO 35.
I was underwater and Cranston Wireless still had service.
I was on an intergalactic spaceship and I could still text my mom at home, and she wanted to know why I wasn't married.
And we also have age restrictions for little boy God Kings.
Cranston Wireless saved my marriage.
Call today, 888-885-5553. Here are the prices for Cranston Wireless. Affordability has never been so cheap, and the morphing grid will always be on your side.
This advertisement was sponsored by Zordon and Alpha's Helmet Cream. Hey listeners, I'm glad you're enjoying what you're listening to. I'm Billy from Zero to Hero Podcast. I'll always be joined by Jim, and me and him are the Bulk and Skull Podcasting. Definitely, if you love what you're listening to, then come swing on by Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you find your podcast, we'll be there too.
We are Talking with Words, and we are checking out every movie, every book, every video game, every TV show that we can get our hands on. Welcome back to Talking with Words. Sorry about your eardrums. You're here with Rob,
Sally,
Cameron,
Ryan, and David.
Man, that fucking delay kills it, doesn't it? This is going to be fun in the edit room.
You should let him go first.
So how well do you know your favorite movie? how much hate do you have for your most hated movie? Because we can definitely help with that.
I'll buy you a drink. You don't have to flirt.
So tonight we're going to watch Memento. Hey, we're going to watch Nope. And we're going to watch the new Thor movie.
You know this is also called The Big Salad?
Maybe she had ribs like Matt Houston. They're just made of jelly.
I was thinking the same. They're so fragile.
You touch them and they just snap. Russell Crowe, when he comes down to address Thor, his little stop and pause, and he lifts his
his skirt
up and walks down.
Yeah, he prances down the stairs.
It was so
He
good.
has not aged well.
Come nerd out with us at Talking with Words anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Yow! Charlie, take it away.
Are we recording?
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with the cartoon. He was a blast to talk with, and I do really look forward to getting him back on the show again to talk about some other things, some other projects that he might be having come up in the future. So, just be watching out for that to be happening. But in the meantime, make sure that you go out and check my podcast networks out, the OIW Podcast Network, the Zio to Hero Podcast Network, and the Avenue Podcast Network. They all have amazing content on them, so make sure that you go out there and check them out while you're waiting on another episode of this show to drop. The next week's episode I will be announcing on social media, so be looking out for that this coming Friday to let you know who will be on the show next. And you're probably thinking, well, Jared, how do I follow you on social media? Well, you can go to my Linktree, which is at the bottom of the show notes for this episode. And it has everywhere that you can find me on social media. It should be near the top of my Linktree. You'll see all the different icons on where you can find me. You can also find my email address on there if you would like to send me an email. And that is giveadatapodcast@gmail.com. Send me a line if you just want to say hi. If you want to send me a dad joke that I can put on this show, because you know I love a good dad joke on here. So yeah, just send me something either on social media or on my email address, and also be following all those places so you'll be up to date with everything that is going on with this show. Also, I am right on the verge of having my shop go live for you guys to go and get merch, but right now it still isn't up. I've got it working. It's so close. I promise. It was probably in the next week or so that I'm going to have it up. I just haven't had a lot of time to get it going. Life has been crazy. Life has been busy. So I haven't had a lot of time to kind of work with it to get it up and live. So just bear with me just a little bit longer. But if you would like something, some of my merch in the meantime, you can always send me an email to my email address that I gave you just a minute ago. And just tell me what size you want, where to ship it, and we'll get that shipped right out to you. So at the end of every episode, you hear DQ sing the song about If You Give a Dad a Podcast. He made that for me almost 2 years ago, and I am so thankful that he did that. If you like the way that sounds, make sure that you go out there and show him some love. Follow all the things that he's doing. He's an amazing guy, an amazing artist who comes out with all kinds of really cool music. So if you're listening to this episode the day that it dropped, there is still time for you to go to Mountain Home, Arkansas, and meet some of the guys from Original Geek. On August 17th, they will be at Treat Your Shelf in Mountain Home, Arkansas, to do a panel and a signing, and they will have all kinds of comics there. You can talk to some of the artists, you can talk to the writers, all that fun stuff. They will be there on August 17th. If you're in that area, make sure that you can go out there and see them. Then they will also be at SpaCon, which is going to be in September, I believe. So be looking out for that as well. I will be going to a show in October, which will be Hallows Con. You heard me talk about it with Creek Wilson. I'm really excited to be a part of this. They've made me the official media for this con, and so I am just stoked to be a part of it and to see what's going to happen at this. So we've got some other live events that will be coming up, me and Original Geek. So just make sure that you stay tuned here or on social media, and you can see all the things that we have going on. I also have two brother networks. They are part of the If You Give a Dad a brand, and that is If You Give a Dad a YouTube channel and If You Give a Dad a cosplay. They're both ran by two guys that I've had on the show that I consider to be very close friends of mine, and they bring out amazing content to help you to either how to navigate having a YouTube channel, how to edit things and things like that, or if you're new to cosplay and you want to know the ins and outs of cosplay, then there is a channel for that. I will have both of those YouTube pages in my show notes, so make sure that you go out there and follow If You Give a Dad a YouTube channel and If You Give a Dad a cosplay. They have great content and they come out with new stuff all the time. If you could, do me a huge favor, go out and rate and review this podcast. Whatever podcast catcher that you're listening to this on, whether it be Spotify or iTunes, or if you're listening on podcatchers or any other place, or Good Pods, any of those places, make sure that you go out there and you leave me a review. Let me know what you think of the show, how it's going. If you like it, if you don't, just give me a review on there. And the more people that actually do that, the more likely I am to be recommended to more people, and I would love to see this show grow. Also, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast wherever it is you're listening. Make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you are notified when a new episode of this show drops. So we've come to the end of another episode of If You Give a Dad a Podcast, and I have something special for you here today. It is time for the dad joke we seek. Billy groans, this part's just too weak. But I know deep inside, there's a grin he can't hide as we dive into Dad Joke of the Week. What does garlic do before a shower? It takes its cloves off.
Seriously?
All right. I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I'm in my room rounded, but I got a podcast on. He calls us beautiful people, then tells us who we have on. The best part of my day, though we're blocked out in my pods. Tell my friends all about it so that they follow along. And the host is kinda nerdy, but guess what I am as well. I don't feel so alone and I began walking out of my shell. Heard a story, I need a connection I haven't felt. I'll be looking for the next one, till then farewell. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. Listen closely, download and tune in remotely. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. And listen closely, download and tune in remotely.
This podcast is part of the OIW Podcasting Network.
Alright, cool, sweet. Baby Jesus. Okay, cool.